So the next one we'll talk about is there's a couple. Let me get through all of these. Put all these on here real quick. Oop, we'll go back. Maybe that's what I was going to do. So there's two types of tax advantage. There's several types of tax advantage savings vehicles. The first ones are IRAs and Roth IRAs. So IRAs, but traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs. Traditional IRAs are pre-tax. So when somebody says traditional, pre-tax, lowers your amount of taxes right now. When you think Roth, think after-tax money. So you don't get a tax deduction now, but you get it's with after-tax money. So the money you contribute to a Roth has already been taxed, and it's going to grow tax-free. For the IRAs for 2019 with the new tax law, it used to be $5,500 before that. With the new tax law that was passed a few years ago, they made that for an index that also for inflation now because it stayed there for a long time. It's now $6,000 per person. You can either put $6,000 in a Roth or traditional or some combination, but the total amount can only be $6,000. Now, if you're over the age of 50, the government says we'll give you an additional catch-up contribution of $1,000. So if there's a husband and wife, they could contribute $7,000 each for a total of $14,000 per year if they're over the age of 50. Now, there are some tax advantage features. Like I said, the first one, it grows tax deferred, meaning you have not paid taxes on it yet. You've just delayed your tax payment till you withdraw it later. That would be pre-tax. That would be a traditional IRA. Now, Roth IRAs, like I said, is after tax or money that you've already paid the taxes up front, and it'll grow tax free from there on out. And so it's just kind of important to know those difference between the two. I generally say if you're under 40 years old, it's best to have a Roth IRA. I know it really depends on the situation, but I would rather, the two pots of money I always tell people is if you had $1 million in a traditional IRA and $1 million in a Roth, that Roth is still $1 million because there's no taxes. This traditional one's probably worth about $700,000 because you're going to pay taxes on it. So that's why Roths they're just valuable. You're growing tax free, and so you must understand that it's really important, but it really depends on your situation. Let's see. Let's go to the next slide. And so there are some different things that you have to do for the different IRAs. So with the traditional IRA, you have to have earned income. You can't have royalties, you can't have capital dividends or anything. You have to have earned income to be able to contribute to a traditional IRA. And you have to be under the age of 70 and a half. 70 and a half is the magic number that you have to start taking what's called your required minimum distribution, or RMD. Actually, I was reading some article the other day that the government is thinking about increasing that 70 and a half, but we'll see. There's some legislation that's pending, but as of right now, it's 70 and a half. Traditional IRA contributions are deductible. So if you put up to $5,000 in a traditional IRA on your taxes, so say you made $50,000, just subtract 5, so you actually only made $45,000. That's where you get that deduction then at that time. So when it says contributions are deductible, it's that. But it also depends whether you're covered by an employer-sponsored retirement plan, and there's some income and filing status for your taxes depends also. There's a table that the IRS has, and depending on how much money, it starts to phase out the deductibility of the $6,000. You get a proportion. I can't remember. They change those tables annually, so it's for inflation, obviously, of course. Roth, you have the ability to contribute depends on income and filing status again, and all contributions are after tax, and the funds grow tax deferred. It's interesting to note one of the main differences between a Roth and a traditional IRA is there's no 70 and a half requirement. So at the age of 70 and a half, you do not have to take an RMD at all. And so that's a lot of people like that because they're not required to. It's growing tax deferred and you can still contribute, but you still have to, again, have earned income also to contribute to a Roth. So going to the distributions now. And so everybody wants to talk about, distributions from a traditional IRA are subject to federal tax. So it just depends on what your tax bracket you're in. So again, we talked about that tax deferral. So if you withdraw $10,000 from your IRA when you're depending on your tax bracket, so just say you're in the 28% tax bracket, so you'll pay 28% of that $10,000 will go toward taxes. That talks about the tax part where distributions are subject to that income tax. If you do a distribution also before the age of 59 and a half, that's a magic number that it's also subject to an additional 10% penalty. So if you say I need to come in and take money out of my IRA before I'm 59 and a half, you'll one, get smacked with your tax rate, and depending on what it is, say you're in the 22% tax bracket, so pay 22% on taxes on that distribution, and if you're below 59 and a half, you're also going to pay another 10%. So you'd pay 32% of what you distributed was going to go to taxes and penalties, which is a pretty significant amount. And so that age 59 is key. If you have other income sources or stuff to pull from there. Use your IRA as a last resort. Let's see, Roth. Qualified distributions for Roth are tax-free. However, they have a 5-year holding requirement. And so just because you put it in a Roth and it grows tax-free, you have to have it in there for 5 years. And this, I don't know why this is still kind of funny to me, because if it is after tax and there's no tax requirement, why they put this next caveat in. But there are a couple carve-outs that they'll allow you to pull money out of your Roth to use and not get penalties or taxes on it. One is, again, you have to be age 59 and a half for a Roth, which to me does not make any sense at all, because it's your money. They put the 5-year holding requirement on there, and it's after tax, but they still say if you pull that money out of a Roth before 59 and a half, you're going to get hit with a 10% penalty, which to me, that's just a kind of a quirky thing in how they have it written. It doesn't make sense, but that's one of the rules. You can pull out without penalty, though, for disability. Also for a first-time home buyer expenses also. Generally, I do not recommend pulling anything out, because you want to let that money grow. You just continue to grow, and each time you pull it out, it just messes up the compounding. And so I always tell people, if you can leave it in, don't touch it. There's other avenues for first-time home buyer expenses. Have an emergency fund to the side so you don't have to pull money out of there. Again, if you don't meet those qualifications, those non-qualified distributions are subject to federal tax plus the 10% penalty. And so it's just one of those quirky things that it doesn't make any sense because it's after tax, but that's how the law is written for a Roth also. So don't ever try to take money out of a Roth or any IRA before you're 59 and a half. It's just a general rule of thumb. Is there any questions so far? Any more questions? So this is a general question that everybody always asks me. If you can do both, should you make a deductible contribution to a traditional IRA or contribute to a Roth IRA? And a typical answer is it depends, because it does depend on your situation. It depends on lots of things. As a general rule of thumb, I like tax-free growth. And the younger you are, I think a Roth is the way to do it. The reason why I say it younger for a Roth and after tax growth is we're at $22 trillion in debt for the government. Tax rates, in my opinion, will probably rise in the future sometime. I don't know that, but I'm just projecting that they would. I would rather wouldn't matter. If you have a Roth, it's not going to matter what tax rates are because it's after tax growth. And so generally, if you're younger, that's kind of playing the game that you're thinking that tax rates are going to be higher. I have no clue, but that's usually general recommendation. It depends, but if you're younger, 40s or younger, a Roth is a great idea. Kind of one strategy that you can use is that you use up to your company's match. In a traditional one, you use up to the company's match, and then what that'll get them is you get that match, which is 100% free money, and then after that, then you contribute to a Roth, and then if you still need to contribute, you go back to the traditional part. And so it just really depends. You can use some of those things in combination together, so it's not a one size or one all. It just kind of depends, and a lot of people like to use them together. A lot of people like to use a regular 401k at work, and now there's a lot of Roth 401ks coming out, and we'll talk about that, which is the same thing as a Roth IRA. But a Roth 401k at work, and then do a Roth IRA, or a Roth 401k, or a 401k at work, and then a Roth IRA. And because what that does, it gives you kind of the best of both worlds to do everything. And so we'll kind of go to the 401ks next, but typical answer, it just depends. One of the theories too they said is if you expect to be in a lower tax bracket now, in retirement, you contribute to one now because you're getting that tax deferred, and then retirement it's going to be lower. I tell people I want to be in a higher tax bracket. That means you made more money, and so there's just a lot of different things, but the big thing to pull away from, it just depends. It really does. It's really situation specific.